Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be studying this very easy concept that is percentages. Before I get started, I should remind you that this topic is divided into two parts. The first part consists of percentages. That is something we'll be discussing today. And similarly, there's another portion to that as well that is known as the concept about interest. And this is something that you'll see me explaining in some other video. Now let's get started with this concept that is percentages. So whenever I say the word percent, you need to understand that this actually means that I'm talking about something which is out of 100. In simple words, you should understand that this symbol of percentage that you see is something that represents 1 over 100. Let's start with an example. So let's say if I ask you, what does this mean in fractions? You could say that's going to be 13 over 100. Or in other words, I can say in decimal, that's going to be 0.13. In a similar way, what do you think about 35%? Like I said, you can convert this symbol over here as over 100. So that's going to be 35 over 100, or I can write this down as 0.35. In a similar way, how about 2.5%? Now, again, this is also very easy. So 2.5% means 2.5 over 100. I can also get rid of this decimal value and write this down as 25 over 1,000. Or I can also write this down as 0.025. You should be able to convert any percentage into a fraction or a decimal. That's just my preference. So what about 22.5%? Again, I'm sure you can also convert this as well. This would be 22.5 over 100. And if I convert this directly into a decimal value, that's going to be 0.225. So you need to understand that this is the same thing as 0.225. So now that you have this rudimentary understanding of percentage, let's have a look over some questions. So we have this question over here. It says, find 15% of 240. The very first thing that you should be familiar with is that the word of in math means multiply. So when I say the word 15%, what does that mean? We just did, right? That's going to be 15 over 100. Or you can say 0.15. Either way, it's the same thing, times 240. If I put this in my calculator, 0.15 times 240, you'll see that the answer comes out to be 36 bucks. In a very similar way, let's try part B as well. This says 31%. Again, that means 31 over 100. Off means multiply, and then we have 6.80. When I calculate this, this ends up, giving me $2.108. Now, this brings me to a very important concept that you should be familiar with. In Olevels and in IGCSE, we have this convention that for any question that is related to money, we always round this to 2 decimal place. That means my final answer will be 2.11. Having said this, let's try out this question that came in specimen paper. So again, I want you to pause this video and I want you to try this out yourself. All right, so I'm hoping you guys are done. 40% means 40 over 100. Off again means times, and then we have 530. If I were to calculate this, this ends up giving you 212 bucks. So that's going to be my final answer over here. Again, this question is something that you would expect in paper 2. I'm not saying that you can't get these kind of questions in paper 1, but yes, if it's paper 1, then the calculation will be easier. If you're clear with this concept, we can actually move on to something that is known as percentage increase or decrease. This is another subtopic that we have. In your book, you'll see that there are 2 different formulas written for percentage increase and percentage decrease. And although that's fine as well, I feel like there's a much easier way to solve these kind of questions. And the way I prefer is by using this formula over here. So Remember that if you want to figure out any percentage change, we can actually figure this out using final value minus initial value over initial value times 100. This is something that's very important. And you need to realize whether it's asking you about percentage increase or decrease, this formula is always applicable all the time. Let's have a look over some questions so that you can actually build up these concepts. All right, so let's have a look. So this is something that came in one of the past papers. And the question reads, Stephen had an annual income of 21,500 bucks in 2018. His annual income increased to 22,790 in 2019. So just by looking at the question, I can see that this over here seems to be my initial value, and this over here is going to be my final value over here. If I plug it into the formula over here, that's going to be percentage increase, final, which is 22,790, minus initial, that's going to be 21,500, over initial, 21,500, times 100. If you were to put this in your calculator, you should end up getting 6% as my final answer. I'm hoping this concept is clear. In a very similar way, there's a question that is more or less, similar to the one we just did. So the question over here now says, the price of an electric drill is 78 bucks. In a sale, the price is reduced by 15%. Calculate the sale price. Now, again, this is something that is relevant to the concept of discount, which is also a subtopic, I would say, of this same core concept, that is percentage. So there are two ways to solve these kind of questions. And I'll start off with the first method, that is something I would probably say a lot of students use, but again, there's a lot of mistakes in this method as well. But anyways, let's just call this method one. Now, method one is you first figure out what is 15% of 78 bucks. So again, what does the word 15% means? Like I said, that's going to be 15 over 100 times $78. If you calculate this in your calculator, you'd realize this comes out to be $11.7. What you need to realize over here is it says in a sale, the price is reduced by 15%. And what does that represent? It represents this much discount. That means out of this $78, you're getting 11.7 as a discount. So that means I can say that my sale price over here will be, sale price is going to be 78 minus 11.7, which should end up giving you 66.3 as my final answer. I get this question a lot. Is it fine if we write down 66.3 or should we write down 66.30? Either way, it's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. You'll see that in the marking scheme, they usually write down 0 in a bracket. I would suggest that, yes, it would be nice if you write it down as 30 because that would represent 30 cents. Otherwise, 3, sometimes represents, as in some, again, people might think it's 3 cents, which is not the case. So it's different, right? As in 30 cents and 3 cents. There's a difference over here. So again, what is method 2? Method 2 is something that is my favorite. And I think an easy way to remember is that if you see the word reduced, that actually means you always take 100% and you subtract this value over here. What I'm trying to teach you over here is that when you go to a market and you buy something, you always pay 100% of that price. Let's say something costs you maybe, I guess, $90. You will be paying $90. It's not like you can get away with paying 85, right? In a very similar way, that the question over here says that the sale price in a sale, the price is reduced by 15%. So my question to you is, how much do we end up paying? If 15% is the discount that I'm getting, how much do I actually end up getting? As in, what's the price that I pay? I can say that's going to be 100 minus 15%. So that's going to be 85%. That means on the counter or over the counter, I'll be paying 85% of the price. So I can easily calculate the sale price directly over here, which is 85 over 100 times $78. And I can guarantee you that it does give you the same answer as 66.30 directly. If the question was asking you the opposite, in this case, like I said, it said reduced. That is why I subtracted this from 100. In a similar way, if I rephrase my question to the word increase, I'm sure you can probably guess what you're supposed to do, right? That's going to be 100 plus 15. I hope this concept is clear as to how you're supposed to do these kind of questions. But either way, it totally depends on you, whatever you find comfortable, whether you stick to method one or method two, it's totally up to you. In a very similar way, I would really like if you can please solve this question over here as well. It's pretty similar, shouldn't take that long. All right, so I'm hoping you guys are done. The question reads, a laptop costs you 800 bucks. In a sale, the cost is reduced by 15%. I can see that it says reduced. That clearly indicates that it has to be 100 minus 15%. That means I should be paying 85%, at the counter. If that is the case over here, we can say that the cost of the laptop is going to be 800 times 85 over 100. This should end up giving you 680 as my final answer over here. I'd like to take a moment over here and show you the marking scheme as well. So if you check out the marking scheme, it says, again, the same answer, 680, but you can see that they've done it using both methods. So we get one method mark if you had done 85 over 100 times 800, that is exactly what I did. Or you figure out 15% of 800, and then you subtract from 800. Either way, you end up getting the same answer. So it totally depends on you how you want to solve this kind of question. All right, so let's continue with our practice. If you check out this question over here, it's a little different to the ones we have done, because now the question is not asking you about the percentage increase or decrease. Instead, they've actually given you this. The question says the shop's total sales of 34,974 in 2022 were actually 4.4% increase on the total sale in 2021. What they're trying to tell you over here is in 2022, they had a sale of almost $34,974. And this is actually a 4.4% increase from the ones they actually had in 2021. So they're asking you what is, or calculate the total sales in 2021. Again, try to understand the question over here. They've given you that in 2022, they had this much sale, which is actually a 4.4% increase. So logically, if you start thinking about it, you'd realize that 2021, this value over here, should be something that is less than this. So for instance, if your answer comes out to be 37,000 or 38,000, that means you've clearly done this wrong. Now, you can't really figure out 4.4% and then subtract. That's not going to give you the right answer. This question is meant to be done a little carefully. So like I said, 4.4% increase. That means if I already assume that in 2021, we had 100% sales, and now the total has increased by 4.4%, that means this value over here is actually 104.4%. I want you to understand this quite well. In 2021, I'm assuming that we already had 100% of the sale. And in 2022, this number has increased by 4.4%. So what does 104.4% means? That means 104.4% actually represents this much value, 34,974. Now, if that is the case over here, we are trying to figure out what does 100% represent. So if you were to divide this value over here in terms of percentage, so I already know that this has to be, the word percentage means over 100. Now, let's assume that's X. So you can actually move all of this in your denominator. And if you try doing this, that means you should end up getting the answer as 34,974 over, we have this value, which is going to be 1.044. Now, how did I get this? Very easy. So I actually divided 104.4 by 100, and I'm just representing this in decimal. If you calculated this in your calculator, you'd realize that the answer comes out to be 33,500. I know some of you are confused right now, so let me explain this again. I'm assuming that in 2021, we had a total sales of 100x or 100x%. Now, the number has been increased by 4.4%, which gives us 104.4. This method that I've done actually is known as the unitary method. So I'm telling you right now that 104.4% of X represent $34,974. If that is the case, what does X represent? X represents 2021, right? So I can actually divide all of this in my denominator. That's what I did, which ends up giving me 33,500. Now, logically, start thinking about it. Don't you think 33,500 is actually 4.4% increase? So I hope this question is clear. If not, we'll have a look at some more questions. So in a very similar way, we have this question over here. It says, Jared received a salary increase of 20%. After the increase, his salary is this much. What was his salary before the increase? So again, you need to realize I'm actually going to assume that his original salary over here was X dollars. And now it has increased by 20%. So you do realize that the original value we're assuming is 100%, right? So can I say after the increase, what's his new total percentage? Can I say that's going to be 120% of X, right? Right? If that is the case over here, I can easily say that 120% of X represents 31,260. And if I were to divide this 31,260 over 1.20, again, how did I get 1.20? Like I said, everyone, the word percent means over 100. So you'll realize that this is the same thing as 1.2. Now, if you were to divide this, you'll realize the answer comes out to be 26,050. That means this was his original salary, and now there was an increase of 20%, which made the total as 31,260. If again you're confused, let's have a look at another question. All right, so let's check this out. The question reads, in a sale, everything is reduced by 5%. A pair of shoes cost you 47.5 bucks in the sale. How much did they cost you before the sale? So again, in this case over here, we're having reduction. And I told you this earlier as well. If it's increase, we always do 100 plus something, whatever that value is. Whereas if the question is about decrease, then we say 100 minus that percentage. So what percentage do we have? It's 5%. So can I say that's going to be 100 minus 5, which gives you 95%? That means after the sale, you actually end up paying this much amount. And they're saying this is equal to this much. So can I say if 100 was the original value? So let's say original cost of this pair of shoes was X dollars. Now I can say the new price, the discounted price, you can say the discounted cost is equal to 95% of X. So can I say that's 95% of X actually represents 47.50? Again, what does the word percent means? Over 100, right? So you can actually divide this by 100. That's going to be 0.95. So that's 0.95 of X is equal to 47.50. And again, if you were to divide this, you will realize that the answer comes out to be 50 bucks. That means before sale, the cost of these shoes were 50 bucks. In a similar way, let's try out another past paper question over here. So the question is, again, a little tricky. It says, in 2009, the cost of posting a letter was 36 cents. I expect everyone to be very well familiar that when I talk about $1, we have 100 cents in $1. So you should know this. So when I say the cost of posting a letter was 36 cents, that means cost is equal to $0.36. That's what we have. And a company posted 3,000 letters. So again, let's see what's the total price of this 3,000 letters. So I can say cost of 3,000 letters would be 3,000 times 0.36. If you were to calculate this, that means the value comes out to be $1,080. That's the price you pay. And this company was given a discount of 4%. So can I say if you're figuring out the discount, that's going to be 1,080 times 4 over 100. What does that give you? $43.2. That means that's the discount amount that this company was given. The question says calculate the total discount given. Now you need to realize they're not asking you how much does the company pay. They're asking you what was the amount of that discount, which is exactly what we calculated. I've seen students, going an extra mile over here. So they do end up getting the discount, but then they start subtracting this as well. So they would say that the company paid 1,080 minus 43.2. This would be 1,036.8. While this is not actually wrong, this is not what they're asking us. So you need to read the question very carefully as to what does the question say. They're just asking us to figure out the discount. So you have to stop over here. Now, in a very similar way, the next part of the question reads, in 2010, the cost of posting a letter was increased from 36 cents to 45. They're asking us about percentage increase. Have I not just explained that there's a very easy formula, right? So I can say that's going to be my initial value over here. This is my initial value. This over here is my final value. So let's everyone calculate the percentage. So I can say percentage increase is equal to final minus initial over initial times 100. If you were to calculate this, 45 minus 36 divided by 36 times 100, that's going to be 25%. I usually get this query that why is it that you have used 45? Shouldn't this be 0.45? Since the unit over here stays the same. So we are having cents. If you want to do it using dollars as well, that's also fine. So you might as well write it down as 0.45 minus 0.36 over 0.36. And you'll realize that the answer still stays the same. That is 25%. So there's absolutely no difference. The reason I chose to do it directly is because I know the cost is still in cents. So we're not changing in dollars, are we? In this question, however, in first part, they were asking in dollars. So hopefully, everyone, I hope this concept is clear. We'll catch up again in the next video. Till then, adios.